Back in 2020, Ubisoft announced Hyperscape, a fast-paced futuristic battle royale set in a virtual city. It was a very unique spin on the classic BR formula that players across the world were immediately intrigued by. Hyperscape had the potential to redefine the battle royale genre with its unique Twitch integration that allowed it to completely dominate viewership. It was looking like it could have been one of the titans to soar above the rest, with a big studio and development team backing it. Yet not long after release, queue times could take up to half an hour to find a game, and player counts were considerably lower within just months from its boom in popularity. The insanely quick and sharp death of Hyperscape serves as a cautionary tale of putting streamers before actual players. As I mentioned before, Hyperscape was very unique compared to most battle royales. Ubisoft very smartly identified that a big reason why battle royales were so popular was because of the streaming scene, especially on Twitch, where hundreds and thousands of viewers will watch their favorite streamer play the game, and thus may be encouraged to try it for themselves. Realizing that they could potentially capitalize on this, Ubisoft would build Hyperscape around the Twitch viewer integration. For example, viewers in a Twitch chat could vote on game modifiers like low gravity, infinite ammo, reveal all players. Streamers would benefit as they'd be able to increase chat activity and just interactivity across the board, while Ubisoft would get free exposure. Additionally, during the closed beta, in order to actually play the game, Ubisoft required that players watch streamers in order to earn Twitch drops, which would give them access to the game. So basically, you had to watch the game to play the game, and for a long time too. However, this feature was a little newer back in 2020 and was far from perfect. The consistency to which people earned drops was very inconsistent. In some really fast cases, viewers could earn drops in as quick as 30 minutes of watching, while in other cases it could take 10 plus hours to earn a key, or for some people they just wouldn't get a key at all. It was a weird situation because on one hand this was driving up Twitch viewership tenfold. The game surpassed 450,000 viewers at points. Yet on the other hand, Ubisoft were in effect blocking players from accessing their game through this feature, which, let's not forget that the whole point of this was to drive players to actually play the game, not watch. Having a high viewer count on your game looks good, but ultimately benefits Twitch more than anyone else. If players did actually manage to play Hyperscape, it wasn't that bad. It had that fast, fluid movement that had an ideally low skill floor and high skill ceiling that players could master. Many did find Hyperscape's movement was too much, especially with the hacks that allowed players to do all sorts of things in a gunfight, but regardless, it made for an entertaining watch. Notice how I said watch and not play? That really sums up a lot of the issues the game faced. When players finally got to play the game, whether that be in the closed beta or eventually open beta, they found that the movement abilities were a lot harder to handle when not being played by really talented Twitch streamers who mastered it all. The game was packed full of get out of jail free cards and easy escapes out of bad situations. That would leave gunfights going on for ages. The truth is, Hyperscape was actually a difficult game, which wasn't a bad thing, but when trying to compete with games like Warzone, Apex and Fortnite, which are very easy and accessible at all skill levels, Hyperscape stood out as being more of a challenge than even the developers anticipated. While the streamers made the game look easy, the actual reality was that the average player struggled to even hit players who knew how to use the movement well. To reiterate, nothing about this was really a con to the game itself, but a con to what it was trying to compete with, which was fast-paced, easy to learn, accessible shooters that prioritize fun over balance in a lot of cases. Ubisoft would try to help new players by introducing a respawn system. This would give noobs a second chance, but unfortunately this didn't fix the problem, as what pushed new players away was a complex base game formula. What Hyperscape at least had on paper was the merging of the player-viewer experience with Twitch integration. This was intended to be a significant aspect of the game, but it relied 110% on there being a Twitch audience in the first place. While it was a great gimmick early on to create an early boom in popularity, it ultimately didn't amount to a lot. But what really sealed Hyperscape's fate was Ubisoft's inability to adapt once that initial Twitch hype wave crashed. As soon as the streamers moved on, so did the audience. Queue times got longer, the player count kept dropping, and Ubisoft's live server support didn't arrive fast enough to stop the bleeding. Keep in mind, Hyperscape released during peak COVID, back when everyone was at home, so a lot of people had tried Hyperscape during its launch window but never came back. The game's verticality, its constant chaos and endless movement abilities that once looked exciting in trailers now felt overwhelming and punishing in practice. And without a steady flow of new players, the Twitch integration that the whole game was built around simply stopped functioning as intended. There were fewer streamers to watch, fewer viewers to vote in events, and fewer matches even happening in the first place. What was once a selling point became an anchor dragging the entire project down. This resulted in Ubisoft pushing out crossplay quicker than they intended to in order to address the player count issues. Ubisoft would introduce a patch that would increase aim assist for controller players. However, the aim assist was way overtuned, and in a vertical shooter where players may struggle to even land shots on each other, this lock-on aim assist felt very out of place and borderline absurd. Another very controversial change they made was the health regeneration delay. Previously, the primary way of healing was not taking damage for 5 seconds and your health would passively regenerate. But with this new change, it now took 15 seconds. This significantly altered the pace of the game, as where in the past you could simply disengage from a firefight using your movement abilities and heal for 5 seconds, now this simply was not possible. It became a universally disliked change and continued to hurt the already bleeding player base. You could argue that this was the one change Ubisoft made that actually affected the better players more than the worse players, but by this point in the game's life cycle, most of the players who remained were the better players. This left Ubisoft in an awkward position. They could either lock in to create the best experience for the veterans who still remained, or alienate those players in an attempt to capture a new audience. But sadly, Hyperscape died just so damn quickly we don't even know where they are planning to go. By early 2022, Hyperscape's fate was sealed. The game that once launched with 500,000 Twitch viewers couldn't even fill a single lobby. On January 27, 2022, Ubisoft announced that Hyperscape would be shutting down later this year. Their statement read, "We set out to create a fast-paced, vertical, and accessible shooter experience, and we're grateful to our community for joining us on this journey. We'll be taking key learnings from this game into future products." It was really just corporate speak for what everybody already knew. Hyperscape had failed to meet expectations. The servers officially went offline on April 28, 2022, less than 2 years after its original release. There was no farewell events, no cinematic send-off, no final update to go out with a bang, just silence. And in a strange way, this made Hyperscape's death hit even harder. It wasn't a bad game, it just never had a chance to grow. Ubisoft moved on before the community ever could, and by the time they realized it needed saving, it was already too late. Sadly, unlike other games in this series, there seems to be absolutely no hope for a revival of any kind. Ubisoft have completely dropped it, and just like XDefiant, it is done. So what can we learn from this? Well, Hyperscape wasn't just another failed battle royale, it was a lesson. A warning for studios that think success can be engineered through marketing hype and influencer campaigns instead of genuine player enjoyment. Ubisoft had everything going for it, funding, technology, and experience, but they chased the wrong kind of engagement. They built a game for Twitch, not for the actual people sitting down to play it. And in the process, they forgot that at the core of every successful game isn't flashy integration or influencer support, it's fun. Hyperscape tried to reinvent the wheel when players just wanted a smoother ride. Instead of improving what worked in the genre, it threw out the fundamentals, replacing accessibility with complexity, and rewarding spectacle over satisfaction. The result was a game that looked incredible on paper, but disconnected from what players actually wanted once they loaded in. Ubisoft have since said that they'd take the lessons from Hyperscape into future projects, and hopefully they meant it. In the end, Hyperscape's story is one of ambition colliding with reality. A vision that was too focused on being different to realize that being playable mattered more. Maybe one day Ubisoft will revisit the idea, maybe as a spiritual successor or something inspired by it. But even if they don't, the lesson it left behind still stands. But that's all for this video, thanks for watching. Also, I'm live on Twitch daily, so if you're interested, come follow.